Ever get the feeling that like there's this hidden energy behind everything we do?
Hmm.
Like why some things, they just feel effortless,
Yeah.
and other things they're just like a constant uphill battle.
Right.
What if we could like actually tap into that energy
Hmm.
and use it to, make better decisions or
Hmm.
navigate the world more smoothly?
Yeah, that's precisely what Dr. David Hawkins tried to do with his
Yeah.
research on consciousness.
So for today's deep dive,
Right.
we're taking a look at his book,
Okay.
Power versus Force:
Mm-hmm.
The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior,
Interesting.
and exploring this whole idea of a map of consciousness.
Okay.
From what I've read, it's a pretty bold claim.
Uh-huh.
He says he can actually measure the energy of human consciousness.
Hawkins believed that everything,
Ooh.
including our thoughts and emotions,
Real-
emits a measurable energy.
Okay.
He used kinesiology or muscle testing
Okay.
combined with an analysis of something called attractor fields
Oh, wow.
to create this map.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm already a bit skeptical, but
Yeah.
let's hear this out.
Okay.
So what exactly is this map supposed to show us?
It's a scale that calibrates different levels of human energy,
Okay.
ranging from feelings like shame and guilt
No.
all the way up to
It's okay.
courage, love, and even enlightenment.
Hmm.
He assigns numerical values to these levels,
Okay.
creating a spectrum of consciousness.
So it's like a rating system for
Right.
how evolved our thoughts and actions are.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
I'm picturing like a meter
Yeah.
with a needle that swings from negative vibes to like total Zen master.
The key takeaway here is the distinction Hawkins makes
Okay.
between a power and force.
Okay.
He argues that force is an energy that tries to overcome resistance,
Okay.
while power is an energy that attracts and elevates.
Okay, that makes sense on an intuitive level.
Yeah,
So like forcing someone to do something
right.
creates pushback and tension, while true power inspires and motivates people.
Exactly. Hawkins uses the example of Gandhi
Right?
leading a movement through peaceful resistance.
Right.
That's an example of power
Okay.
because it resonated with people on a deeper level and
Huh.
inspired them to join the movement.
Okay.
On the other hand,
Yeah.
a dictator ruling through fear and oppression
Right.
is using force,
Right.
which ultimately leads to instability and resentment.
So this isn't just some abstract philosophical concept.
Right.
He's saying this applies to real world situations
Absolutely.
and even historical events.
He even applied this to organizations,
Wow.
suggesting that successful businesses like early Walmart
Okay.
thrived because they prioritized genuine service and meeting people's needs,
Right.
which is inherently a form of power.
Okay.
This contrasted with companies that focus solely on efficiency and profit,
Yeah.
which ultimately represent the limitations of force.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this could be useful.
Uh-huh.
But let's get back to this consciousness scale for a minute.
Okay.
You said it ranges from shame to enlightenment,
You're right.
which is a pretty wide spectrum.
It is.
How does he actually define these different levels?
Hawkins assigns a numerical value to each level,
Okay.
from 20 for shame
Okay.
all the way up to 600 for peace,
Wow.
and even higher for enlightened beings like Buddha or Jesus,
Mm.
which he calibrated at 701,000.
Whoa. That's a lot of numbers.
It is, yeah.
Can you give me a rundown of some key levels on this scale?
Sure. Levels below 200
Okay.
are characterized by negative emotions like shame, guilt, fear, and anger.
Right.
These are the levels where people tend to experience life as a struggle
Hmm.
and often feel powerless.
So basically those negative emotions are actually draining our energy.
Precisely. They keep us locked in these cycles of negativity
Yeah.
and prevent us from accessing our true power.
All right. So then what happens at 200?
Okay.
You mentioned that was a kind of turning point.
Right. 200 is the level of courage.
Okay.
This is where people start to shift from a mindset of force to a mindset of power.
Okay.
They develop the inner strength to face their fears,
Right.
take risks,
Uh-huh.
and embrace challenges.
Okay.
Life becomes more exciting and fulfilling.
So courage is like the gateway to accessing
Yeah.
higher levels of consciousness.
And as you move up the scale,
Okay.
things continue to evolve.
Yeah.
At 250, you have neutrality,
Okay.
which is all about flexibility,
Right.
non-judgment, and detachment from outcomes.
Okay.
People at this level are more adaptable and
Right.
able to navigate challenges
Yeah.
without getting stuck in rigid positions.
That sounds pretty helpful.
Yeah,
So it's about becoming more open and less reactive to
exactly.
life's ups and downs.
And this leads to 350,
Okay.
acceptance.
Hmm.
At this level, people start to understand they're the creators of their own experience.
Yeah.
They take responsibility for their lives and find
right.
happiness within themselves.
That seems like a major shift in perspective.
It is.
Instead of blaming others for our problems,
Mm-hmm.
we start to recognize our own power to choose our responses.
Precisely. This is where true empowerment begins.
Ah.
And it opens the door to even higher levels,
Okay.
like love at 500,
Right.
characterized by compassion and a desire to serve, and peace at 600,
Okay.
which is a state of transcendence and oneness with all of life.
Okay, I have to admit those higher levels sound pretty amazing,
They are.
but also maybe a little intimidating.
Sure.
Like, are we really supposed to reach those levels in our daily lives?
The point isn't necessarily to fixate on reaching a specific number.
Okay.
The real value of this map is in understanding how our energy levels fluctuate throughout the day
Okay.
and how those fluctuations affect our experiences.
So it's about becoming more aware of our own internal state
Exactly.
and recognizing how our thoughts and emotions influence the way we interact with the world.
And with that awareness,
Okay.
we can start to make conscious choices that shift us toward those higher, more empowering levels.
I'm starting to see how this could be really useful.
Yeah.
But before we go any further,
Sure.
I have to ask, how do we even know this scale is legitimate? Did Hawkins actually prove this whole thing scientifically?
That's a valid question and
Okay.
certainly a point of debate.
Muscle testing. Really?
While Hawkins was a respected psychiatrist,
Good.
his methods weren't exactly mainstream science.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm a bit skeptical about the whole muscle testing thing.
Sure.
How can that possibly be a reliable measure of something as complex as consciousness?
Hawkins argued that muscle testing could be used to tap into a deeper level of consciousness that lies beyond our rational mind.
Okay.
He believed our bodies hold kind of innate wisdom that can guide us toward truth. And that muscle testing is a way to access that wisdom.
So it's like our bodies know things our minds haven't quite caught up to yet.
Yeah, you could say that.
I'm not entirely convinced,
Sure.
but I'm willing to keep an open mind.
That's the spirit.
Okay.
And to be fair, Hawkins wasn't the first to propose this idea
Yeah.
of different levels of consciousness.
Hmm.
Many spiritual traditions throughout history have
well-
described similar concepts.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So this isn't just some new age theory.
Right.
It's actually rooted in ancient wisdom.
Exactly. Think about the Buddhist concept of enlightenment
Okay.
or the Hindu concept of chakras.
Right.
These systems all point to the idea that there are different levels of energy and awareness
Okay.
we can access.
Okay. That gives this whole concept a bit more weight.
Yeah.
But even if we accept the general idea,
Sure.
how do we figure out where we fall on this map? Can we actually measure our own level of consciousness?
Hawkins believed you could use muscle testing to do just that.
Okay.
He even claimed you could use it to calibrate the energy of a book,
Really?
a movie,
Wait a minute.
or even a historical event.
Are you saying I can muscle test a book
That's what Hawkins proposed.
to see if it's going to inspire me or bore me
Though, again,
before I even open it?
the scientific validity of that is debatable.
Okay, so maybe we should take the exact numbers with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
But even if this whole muscle testing thing is a bit out there,
Yeah.
I'm still finding this concept of the map of consciousness pretty intriguing,
I agree.
especially this whole power versus force idea.
It offers a powerful framework for understanding the energy dynamics of our lives and making choices that are aligned with our highest good.
All right, so let's get into that.
Okay.
How do we actually apply these insights to our daily lives? How can we become more aware of our own energy levels
Right.
and make choices that lead to greater empowerment?
That's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so we've laid out this whole idea of a map of consciousness
Right.
with, different levels of energy
Yeah.
influencing how we experience the world.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually use this information
Right.
to make positive changes? I mean,
that's
it's one thing to understand the theory,
It is. Yeah.
but how do we translate that into practical action?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
One of the most valuable aspects of Hawkins' work is that it provides us with concrete tools
Okay.
for raising our own level of consciousness
Yeah.
and navigating the world with more power and less force.
Okay, so let's dive into that.
Sure.
Give me some practical tips. Where do we even begin?
One of the simplest yet most powerful things you can do
Okay.
is become more aware of your own energy. Start paying attention to how you feel throughout the day.
Okay.
Notice those moments
Yeah.
when you're feeling drained or anxious or irritable.
So if I'm feeling those negative emotions,
Uh-huh.
that could be a sign
It could be.
that my energy level is dipping down
Right.
toward those lower levels of consciousness.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the opposite is also true.
Mm.
Pay attention to when you're feeling energized,
Right.
joyful, and inspired.
Okay.
Those are signs that you're aligned with a higher frequency.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's say I realize I'm stuck
Sure.
in a negative energy pattern.
Okay.
What can I actually do to shift myself
Right.
to a more positive state?
Hawkins suggests several techniques.
Yeah.
One of the simplest is to consciously choose a more positive thought.
Okay.
Ask yourself,
Yeah.
what would it feel like to choose love over fear right now? Or compassion over judgment?
So it's about actively shifting our focus, not just trying to force the negative thoughts away.
You're right.
Because I've definitely tried that,
Yeah.
and it never seems to work.
Resisting negative thoughts often just makes them stronger.
Right.
The key is to gently redirect your attention
Mm.
towards something more empowering.
Okay.
Hmm.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
But what about those situations where we're surrounded by negativity,
Sure.
like dealing with a difficult coworker,
Okay.
or even just watching the news?
Right.
How do we protect our own energy
Right.
without becoming isolated
Yeah.
or shutting ourselves off from the world?
That's where the concept of spiritual discernment comes in.
Ah.
It's the ability to recognize the energy level
Wow.
of a situation or a person
Right.
and make conscious choices about
Yeah.
how you engage with them.
So it's about being aware of the energy we're encountering,
Mm-hmm.
but not absorbing it
Right.
or letting it drag us down.
Exactly.
Okay. But how do we actually do that?
Right.
I mean, it's easy to say, don't let it affect you,
Sure.
but it's a lot harder to put that into practice.
It takes practice, for sure.
Okay.
One helpful technique is to simply observe your own reactions.
Hmm.
Notice how you feel
Okay.
when you're interacting with certain people
Right.
or in certain situations.
Yeah.
If you start feeling drained or negative,
Okay.
that's a sign to create some distance
So
or shift your approach.
if I'm having coffee with a friend who's constantly complaining,
Right.
and I find myself getting sucked into that negativity,
Mm-hmm.
I might need to set some boundaries.
Yeah.
Or steer the conversation in a more positive direction.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about judging that friend
Right.
or labeling them as negative.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the energy dynamic and taking steps to protect your own well-being.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about those times when we can't avoid
Yeah.
those negative influences?
Right.
Like if you have a difficult boss
Okay.
or you're dealing with a family crisis.
In those situations, Hawkins emphasizes the importance of compassion.
Okay.
Remember that everyone is on their own journey,
Mm.
and that even people who are operating from a lower level of consciousness
Yeah.
are often doing the best they can
Okay.
with the awareness they have.
So it's about recognizing that their negativity
Uh-huh.
is probably coming from a place of pain or fear
Exactly.
and responding with understanding
Mm-hmm.
rather than judgment.
Right.
But isn't that just letting them off the hook?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Compassion doesn't mean condoning bad behavior
Right.
or allowing yourself to be mistreated.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the humanity in others
Mhm.
and choosing to respond from a place of love
Okay.
rather than fear.
Right.
And that in itself is a powerful act.
Okay. I can see how that would shift the dynamic.
Yeah.
Instead of getting caught up in a power struggle,
Right.
we're choosing to stay centered in our own energy.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be real.
Sure.
There are times when it's really hard to stay compassionate,
Right.
especially when people are acting
Yeah.
in hurtful or destructive ways.
It can be.
What do we do in those situations?
That's where the practice of forgiveness becomes essential.
Okay.
It's not about condoning the action,
Right.
but about releasing the negative energy
Mm.
it creates within you.
Okay.
Holding on to resentment or anger
Yeah.
only keeps you tethered
Right.
to that lower level of consciousness.
So forgiveness is actually a way
It is.
to protect our own energy.
Precisely.
It's not about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's about us.
It's about freeing yourself
Okay.
from the weight of those negative emotions
Yeah.
and reclaiming your power. And sometimes the most powerful act of forgiveness
Okay.
is simply choosing to see the other person
Yeah.
as a soul who is capable of growth and transformation,
Right.
even if they're not there yet.
That's a really beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got awareness,
Mm-hmm.
choosing positive thoughts,
Right.
spiritual discernment,
Yeah.
compassion, and forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
What other tools does Hawkins offer
Right.
for raising our consciousness?
One of the most profound, yet often overlooked practices is gratitude.
Okay.
Cultivating a sense of gratitude
Mhm.
for the good things in your life, no
Right.
matter how small,
Yeah.
can dramatically shift your energy.
Because when we're focused on what we're grateful for,
Exactly.
we're naturally aligning ourselves with that higher frequency of love and abundance.
Gratitude is a powerful antidote to fear,
Okay.
scarcity, and negativity.
Hmm.
It helps us to recognize the abundance that
Right.
already exists in our lives
Yeah.
and to attract even more good things.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all of these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
It's about becoming more conscious of our thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
our reactions,
Right.
and the energy we're putting out into the world.
Precisely.
Okay.
And remember, even small shifts in our energy
Mm-hmm.
can have a ripple effect on those around us.
So it's not just about our own personal growth.
Right.
It's about contributing
Exactly.
to a more positive and empowered collective consciousness.
And that's a conversation we can dive into even deeper.
Okay.
But before we do,
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of the things
What?
that have resonated with you most so far?
Honestly, I really drawn to this idea of power versus force.
Okay.
It's gave me like a whole new way to think about
Uh-huh.
how I approach
Mm.
challenges and interactions.
Yeah.
And this concept of spiritual discernment
Mm-hmm.
is really resonating with me too.
Okay.
I'm starting to see how I can use it to set
Yeah.
healthier boundaries and protect my own energy,
Yeah.
especially in those unavoidable, difficult situations.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're already starting to apply these principles
Yeah.
in your own life.
I'm definitely trying.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress,
Sure.
but I can already feel the difference.
That's great.
Okay, so you mentioned we could go even deeper
Yeah.
into this whole idea of collective consciousness.
Right.
I'm really interested to hear more about that.
Well, one of the most fascinating aspects of Hawkins' work is his research on the overall level of consciousness
Okay.
of humanity as a whole.
Wow.
He believed that the collective energy of humanity
Yeah.
has been evolving over time,
Hmm.
and that we've actually crossed a
Okay.
significant threshold in recent decades.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Okay.
Tell me more about that. So you're saying there's been an actual
Yeah.
measurable shift
An actual measurable shift.
in the overall energy of humanity.
Yeah. That's what's so fascinating about his research.
How did Hawkins even figure that out?
He used his calibration system
Okay.
to analyze historical events,
Hmm?
social movements,
Okay.
and cultural trends.
Okay.
Based on his findings,
Yeah.
he concluded that for a long time,
Okay.
humanity as a whole was
Mhm.
calibrated below 200,
Okay.
stuck in those lower levels of consciousness,
Right.
dominated by force,
Right.
fear,
Hmm.
and negativity.
But that's the level of courage, right?
Exactly.
The tipping point where power starts to emerge.
That's right.
Are you saying we finally moved past that
According to Hawkins's research, yes.
as a species?
He believed that in recent decades,
Wow.
the collective consciousness of humanity
Okay.
has risen above 200.
Okay, I have to admit that's a pretty hopeful thought.
It is, yeah.
But if that's true,
Yeah.
why doesn't it feel like the world is becoming
Right.
a more peaceful and loving place? I mean,
Sure.
we're still bombarded with news about conflict,
Right.
injustice,
Of course.
environmental destruction every day.
It's important to remember that progress isn't always linear or immediate.
Okay.
Even though the overall trajectory might be upward, there will always be fluctuations, setbacks, and challenges along the way.
So it's like we're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Exactly.
But the overall trend is still positive.
Yeah, and it's important to remember
Okay.
that even though we may have crossed that 200 threshold,
Right.
there are still many individuals and even entire groups who
Right.
are operating from those lower levels of consciousness.
Which explains why we still see so much conflict and negativity in the world.
Exactly.
It's like we're in this transition phase
Right.
where the old ways of force and fear are clashing with this emerging awareness of power and love.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this is where understanding the map of consciousness can be so helpful. It allows us to see these conflicts,
Yeah.
not just as political or social issues,
Okay.
but also as clashes of energy.
So instead of getting caught up
Mm-hmm.
in the drama and polarization,
Right.
we can step back
Yeah.
and observe the underlying energy dynamics at play.
Exact.
That could be a real game changer
It could.
in terms of how we approach these challenges.
It allows us to respond with more compassion and understanding,
Right.
even when faced with views or actions
Okay.
that seem completely opposed to our own.
Okay. So if we accept that humanity's collective consciousness
Right.
is actually evolving,
Yeah.
where do we go from here? What can we do
That's the most empowering part of this whole concept.
to contribute to this positive evolution?
It means we're not just passive observers in this process.
Okay.
We each have the power to influence the collective energy field through
Yeah.
our own thoughts,
Okay.
choices, and actions.
So it's not just about working on our own
Right.
individual level of consciousness.
It's not just about us as individual.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected
Mm-hmm.
and that our individual energy
Right.
contributes to the whole.
Exact. And remember that ripple effect we talked about earlier?
Mm.
Every time you choose a loving thought
Right.
over a fearful one,
Yeah.
every time you act with compassion instead of judgment,
Right.
you're sending out a positive vibration that has the potential to influence others.
So it's like we're each a tiny drop of water
That's a beautiful
in a
analogy.
vast ocean.
Yeah.
But together, those drops create the tide
In the more
that
individuals
can shift the entire energy of the planet.
who consciously choose to embody those higher frequencies
Okay.
of love, compassion, and peace,
Mm-hmm.
the more powerful that tide becomes.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah,
It's both humbling and incredibly empowering
it is.
to think that we each have a role to play
Yeah,
in this evolution of consciousness.
absolutely.
But it also feels like a huge responsibility.
It is a big responsibility.
Where do we even begin?
Start with yourself.
Okay.
Cultivate those qualities
Yeah.
you want to see more of in the world. Practice forgiveness, embrace gratitude,
Right.
act with kindness,
Hmm.
and choose love over fear
Okay.
whenever possible.
So it's about walking the talk, Rain.
Exactly.
Living by those principles ourselves,
Yeah.
even when it's challenging.
Because the most powerful way to change the world is to embody the change we want to see.
Right.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone.
Okay.
Connect with like-minded individuals.
Hmm.
Support organizations that are aligned with your values.
Okay.
And work together to create
Yeah.
a more conscious and compassionate world.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We're much stronger together than we are alone.
Absolutely.
So it's about finding our tribe,
Mm-hmm.
those people who inspire us to be our best selves.
And remember, even though the world can feel incredibly divided at times,
Right.
at the heart of it, we all share the
Mhm.
same basic desire for love, connection, and happiness.
Okay.
And by tapping into that shared humanity,
Yeah.
we can start to bridge those divides. Right.
And create a more harmonious future.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
Well,
It's given me a whole new framework for understanding
I'm glad to hear it.
the world and my place in it.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I started out pretty skeptical,
Sure.
but now I'm feeling a real sense of hope and possibility.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
And remember, this is just the beginning. There's always more to explore,
Right.
more to learn,
Okay.
and more to discover on this journey of consciousness.
So for all of you listening,
Right.
I encourage you to take this information
Yeah.
and run with it. Explore Hawkins' work.
Uh-huh.
Experiment with these tools.
Right.
And most importantly,
Yeah.
trust in your own power to make a positive difference in the world.
I love that.
Because together,
Yeah.
we can create a future
Mhm.
that reflects the highest potential of humanity.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes.
Until next time,
Yeah.
keep seeking, keep growing.
And keep shining your light.